welcome everyone to the eighth session of CS Saturdays. Uh, so we're very proud to say that we've successfully completed like a week of these sessions. Like we are doing it every Saturday, but we've done 7 sessions, so it's like a week of work, and this is the eighth session. So we've covered many concepts in C++ and STL. So we've seen some STL. We've initially covered some basics of C++ and slowly moved on to STL. And we've seen some containers like sets, maps, queues, and stacks. Uh, you must have attended sessions by Pujita, Revant, and Prashant, Anisha. So today we'll be seeing another concept in C++. Actually, not one but three. So we'll be learning about operator overloading, iterators and comparators. The main topic today is iterators and comparators, but in order to like get a sense of how iterators and comparators are working, you'll have to know how operator overloading works. So we'll see what operating overloading is and iterators and comparators are. So that is what will be in today's session. Sorry, a little bit about myself. I am Sai Kiran. I am a third year CSC student here in VVIT. I am also the executive of Coding Studio. Well, the co-executive. Uh, so yeah, today I'll be your host. And okay, let's get started. So um, first of all, I want to ask you guys a question. What is an operator? Can you answer in the chat box? What do you think an operator is? There are operators in every language, right? Not just in C++. So just type a statement. Tell me what you think an operator is. What does an operator do? So basically, operators are just symbols, right? We have so many different symbols. Like we have the plus symbol, we have the minus symbol, we have multiplication, division. All of these operations have a symbol, and that symbol is called an operator. So operators are used to perform operations on operands. So when you add two numbers, the plus symbol is called the operator, and those two numbers are called the operands, right? So let me go to VS Code once. So let's write a simple program, a very simple program to just add two numbers. Okay, so let's take A is equal to 10 and B is equal to 20. Now let's just print A plus B. Okay, so this is our simple program. Let's run it. So we get the answer as 30, right? So plus was the operator and these two A and B were the operands. Now I want you to tell me what would happen if I did this. Like uh, if instead of being integers, A was 3.5 to 2.5 and B was 1.5, what would the answer be? What would the answer be? Put it in the chat. We're just adding two numbers. So what will the answer be? 2.5 plus 1.5. Yep, it will be 3, right? Actually, it won't be 3, it will be 4 because it is you have 0.5 here. Yeah. Anyway, so we'll get 4. So C++ knows how to add numbers. I mean, it knows how to add integers. It also knows how to add floating point integers. Now tell me, what should happen when we add two strings? For example, let's string A be equal to ABC and B be equal to DEF. Now tell me what I should get when I say A plus B. Like if you as a normal person, when I tell you to add string A and string B, what do you think? What do you do? Like, do you add uh, do you add the ASCII values of A and D and then B and D and C and F, or do you what do you do with when I say add two strings? What do you understand by that statement? What do you think the output should be? So that means the technical term is concatenation. So concatenation is joining of two strings. So um, previously, okay, actually let's first run this program and see what we get. So yeah, this is what we are getting, right? We're getting A, B, C, D, E, F. It is being joined and printed. So how does C++ know that when you add two numbers, it should give you a number, but when you use the same operator with strings, it is giving you another string? Like uh, like the same plus operator is behaving differently when the data types are different. So how do you think it's doing that? Well, the answer is operator overloading. So that's what we are here to explore. Like using operator overloading, you can give new meaning to the operator itself. Like for example, let us make a a structure called basket. Okay, you know structs, right? We covered structs in one of our initial sessions. Uh, so let's make a struct called basket, and let this basket contain a member called items, total number of items. I'll just call it total items. Okay. So initially the basket will contain, when you create this basket, the total items will be 0. This is the constructor. The this function like thing that you're seeing here is called the constructor of this structure. So when you create a basket, this function will be called first. Even if you call it or not, it will be called automatically. So that's what a constructor is. So it creates this basket thing. So initially total items will be 0, and whenever you let's say that you add a new item, the total number of items should increase, right? So let's add a function called add. So when you add an item, total number of items should increase. Okay. So and when you remove one, total number of items should decrease. So we'll say minus minus. This is a very simple structure, guys. We just have one variable inside it, total items. You're adding it. I mean, you can add items to it or you can remove items to it. Okay. So this is our definition of a basket. Now let's create these baskets. I'll empty my main here. Now let's create a basket B1 and B2. Okay, so initially B1 and B2 both will have 0 items. So now let's add some items into B1. Let's call add sometimes. B1.add. Let's add 2 items here. And in B2, let's add 2 items. Okay, let's add some more in B2. Okay, so now tell me guys, how many items does B1 and how do B1 and B2 have? B1 has 2 and B2 has 3 items. So now let's make a third basket. Let's call it B3. And I want to put the number of items in B1 and B2 into B3. So I have 3 baskets now. Now B3 is the new basket. I want to put the items that are in B1 and the items which are in B2. I want to put them inside B3. So I want to say this, I want to write that statement like this. B3 is equal to B1 plus B2. I want to write like this. But do you think that this will work? And then I want to print B3. There are a lot of problems here. Okay, let's try to execute this. Let's see what happens. Yeah, we get a big error. Let's see what the error is. You'll have to scroll up a little bit. Don't be scared of this error. C++ throws big errors, but all you have to do is just scroll up a little bit and find some red thing. So if you scroll to the top of this error, you see this line, right? It's saying error, no match for operator plus operand types are basket and basket. No match for operator plus operand types are basket and basket. Oh no, sorry guys, I hit clear by mistake. Yeah, let's go to the top again. Okay, wait, let me clear this. Clear the terminal once and let's run it again. Okay, let's go to the error. Yeah, so it's saying line number 34, we have this error, right? So what is the line number 34? This is the line number 34. B3 is equal to B1 plus B2. It's saying that operator plus uh, has operand types basket and basket. We are adding two baskets, but it does not know how to add them. Like C++ does not know how to add two baskets. It only knows how to add numbers. It knows how to add strings, but baskets are something that we created. C++ doesn't have baskets, so it does not know how to add baskets. So since basket is a user defined data type, we created baskets. We also need to tell it how to add baskets. So I want to explain to C++ what to do when I say basket plus basket. So logically, when you add two baskets, you should get another basket, right? Just like when you add two numbers, you get another number. When you add two strings, you get another string. Similarly, when you add two baskets, you should also get another basket. So we'll tell that to C++ now. So that was our first error. Now let's see how we can kill that error. So the way we tell C++ what to do is by writing a function. Okay. So first thing is think of this addition as some function. Okay. You'll call a function whenever there is basket plus basket. You'll call a function. So it should return another basket. Just like, for example, if you were writing code to add two numbers, then you would take two numbers like this, right? This would be your add function, and you would say return a plus b. Do you guys agree with this function? This function I wrote to add two numbers. So if you were to write an add function, this is what you would do, right? You would take two numbers as input and return another number, so which will be an integer. So that's why the return type is also int. So this was our previous function, right? Uh, Now we'll create this new add function basket. I mean, add baskets function. So this should return a basket. So its return type should be a basket. And now the function name needs to be a special name. You can't write anything that you want. You have to specify this word called operator. And after that, specify the uh, symbol that you're using. We are using plus symbol. So we'll put plus and the operators. Struct basket b1, comma, struct basket b2. Okay. Now the resultant basket should be b3. Let's make b3. And now b3's total items should be b1 dot total items plus b2 dot total items. Okay. So this is the plan to add two baskets. This is how you tell C++ how you can add two baskets. And finally, you need to return it. Return b3. Okay. So now whenever you say basket plus basket, C++ will know what to do. Whenever you say b1 plus b2, what it will do is it will call this function operator plus struct basket with b1 and b2 as the operands. Okay, it will send those two here, calculate B3 and return it. So this B3 will get the value of whatever is returned here. Okay, and since okay, let's go slowly. Let's see what happens now. uh, you can't do this. You have to, let's see how many items B3 has now. See out number of items in B3 is equal to B3 dot total items. Let's see what we get. I'll pull up the terminal a little bit. Okay, so we got the output saying number of items in B3 is 5, which is correct, right? We have two items in B1, 3 items in B2. So B3 should get 5 items. So now we told C++ what to do when you say plus, when you mention plus with baskets. You can do another thing, like let me show you the slide. So when you add two strings, you're also doing operator overloading, because a computer actually does not know how to add two strings, but uh, C++ performs operator overloading on strings, and it explains to the computer how to add two strings. That is, uh, it joins two strings, and that is what we mean when we say string A plus string B. Okay, so meaning of addition changes for different data types. So you can explain that meaning using operator overloading. Similarly, uh, all of you know this line, right? You can understand this line, cout hello endl. Everybody understands this line, but there is something that we overlook a lot of times. Like if you don't know this, then you probably overlooked this before. There is this operator here, like cout is there, and then there is this operator. If you know bitwise operators in any language, you will recognize that this operator, which is marked with this red arrow, is called the left shift operator. What it does is it multiplies a number by 2. Technically, it adds a 0 to the right side of the binary representation, which is equivalent to multiplying that number by 2. For example, if I have x is equal to 1 and I say left shift this number by 1, then it will become 10 in binary, and 10 is equivalent to 2 in decimal. So that is the left shift operator. But we are using left shift operator here differently. When I say cout left shift hello, it does not mean left shift cout by hello times. It doesn't make sense in English, right? What we are actually saying is send this hello string to this cout object so that it can print hello onto the console. That is the terminal, whatever the output screen you have, right? It is going to print this hello onto the terminal, and it will return this object again. A little story about cout and cin. Cout and cin are what are called as output and input stream objects. Okay, so what these allow you to do is take inputs and outputs. So these are special objects in C++, and if you they can print into files, they can write into the console, they can do all sorts of these things regarding input and output. They can read integers, they can read anything that you want. So but how does it know, C++ know what to do when you give it a string on the right side, and on the left side you mention an output string output object, output stream object like cout. It's printing it, right? So this is also a form of operator overloading, and it is chained. So let me show you what chaining is. So here we have b3 is equal to b1 plus b2, right? So let's add another basket, say B4. Let's put B4, and I'll quickly add 4 items to B4. Okay, I'll just copy it 4 times. Now B4 has, okay, let me make this a little less confusing. Let all of these be B3. Okay, B3, and let this be B4. Okay, don't be confused. We have B1, B2, B3, and finally here we have B4. Okay, so B4 is the addition of B1 and B2, and you can also add B3 now. Okay, now what you should notice here is, in this function we told it to only it knows how to add 2 baskets, but it does not know how to add 3 baskets. So let's see what happens if we run this now. And here also we need to print b4 dot total items. Okay, so the answer is, it's saying number of items in b4 is 9, which is correct only, since 5 plus 5 plus 4 is 9, right? So it still worked. Why do you think it worked? Does anybody have any ideas? Like, we didn't tell it how to add 3 numbers, but it's still saying, giving me the correct answer. Does anybody have any hints? I think, I think word Neeraja says word add says. Okay, I think you guys have some vague idea of how this is working, but you're not able to say it. Okay, let me explain. So what are we doing here? How does this expression get evaluated? So I'll just write it here itself. So this is not code. I'm just explaining how this works. So the plus operator, you have 3 operands here. So how is this evaluated by the compiler? So this becomes b1 plus b2 plus b3. Okay. So when you add b1 and b2, what are you getting? You'll get another basket, right? So let's call it basket x. So this will become x plus b3. So 3 baskets now became 2 baskets. And now again we are adding 2 baskets. So now finally you'll get the sum of x plus b3, which will be b4. Let's call this y. Okay, so this is how it works. 3 become pairs of 2, and finally you take 2 and evaluate it. So that's how it's evaluated. I hope you understood it. And similarly, and why is this happening? It is only working because whenever you add 2 items, you're also returning an item of the same type. When I'm adding 2 baskets, I'm returning another basket so that it can be added to other baskets. So similarly, in cout also, if you see the statement, cout is getting some string here, number of items, and once this is evaluated, it returns another cout. So actually, what happens here is, for example, let's take this statement, cout hello 123 and some character, finally endl. So let's take this statement, forget about the rest of the program. So take this statement, let's run it. cout does not name a type. What did I do? Yeah, got it. So we are printing a string, then we are printing a number, and then we are printing a character. We are chaining it, right? We are not even saying cout hello, then cout 123, then cout a. We are not doing that. But what is happening here is, it will first evaluate cout hello. So now we get hello as the output. Next, this statement becomes cout 123 a and l. So basically, this part of the statement executed and it returned another cout. Okay. So now in place of cout hello, we only have cout. Now again, what will happen? Cout 123 will work. So the output will now be cout hello 123. And in place of cout 123, we'll get another cout a and l. And again, the same thing. Finally, you have cout a. So the output will be cout 123 a. And cout a will be replaced by a single cout. And finally, we have cout and l, which will simply put a new line at the end of the string. So the last output will be hello 123 and a. Okay, so this is how chaining works, because every time cout is calling, operator overloading is happening, it is returning object of the same type. You are able to uh, chain your operators like this, one after the other. It is called chaining. So that is how operator overloading is working. So now let's do one. Now that we've seen that, let's do something interesting. Uh, till now, if we wanted to look at a basket, that is, if I want to print the details of a basket, I'm saying this, right? I'm saying b4 dot print total items. I'm I'm being very specific. I'm telling it what to do. Instead, I just want to say b4, like just print b4 and tell me what it looks like. Okay. So, but the problem is that C++ does not know how to print a basket. It knows how to print numbers, it knows how to print strings, but a basket is a user-defined data type. We made it. It does not know how to print it. So now we need to tell it how to do that. So let's write another function to print baskets. So when you are using cout, what should be the return type? Like once this statement, this part gets executed, this should be replaced by cout and l, right? So that chaining continues. So what do you think should be the return type of this function? So obviously the operator is left shift, and the first object, that is the first operand for this operator, is cout. Cout is an object of this type. You guys might not know this, but I'm telling you, cout is a OStream object, that is output stream object. Don't worry about all this, this is irrelevant, but think about the how operator loading is working, overloading is working. Okay. And the second object is basket, struct basket. So basically you're saying, when I say cout left shift basket, what should you do? So first thing is, we should print out uh, the total number of items. Total number of items. I'll print a nice string like this. There should be basket B, something, basket B. B dot total items. Okay. So this is what should happen. When I say cout B4, it should say this. It should print this line. Now, what should this return? I want to know from you guys. I want this chain to continue. So this statement should be converted into this statement. So what should this function return? Does anybody have any ideas? I'll make my question more clear. So here in the basket plus operator overloading function, what did we do? We added two baskets and returned a basket. So we are able to chain baskets like addition like this, b1 plus b2 plus b3. You can go on continuously because each addition will return another basket, and that basket can be added to its neighbor's basket, and so on. You can add all the baskets like that. So similarly, uh, if I want to continue the cout statement by chaining operands continuously, then each operation should return which type, like what should it return. So here we'll just return cout. This is the answer to my question. Okay, so what happens is this statement cout before will call this function operator left shift. Okay, it will print this statement normally, and finally it will return cout. So whatever I highlighted here, cout before, it will print the output, and now it will become cout ended. And now C++ knows what to do with cout ended. So it will simply print a new line after this. Now let's try it. Let's try what happens when you print baskets like this. Let's print B1, then let's print B2, B3, and B4. I'm printing 4 baskets directly. Let's see what happens. I'll remove this other line. So now let's run it. What are we getting? No type named type. Okay, I forgot to mention the return type here. So the return type for this operator overloading is O stream only, output stream, because cout is that cout's type is O stream. It should also return an O stream. Now let's run it. Yeah. Do you see this output? Let me clear it and run it again for you. Yeah. Do you see this? Total number of items 2, 3, 4, 9. Yeah, exactly. So this is how operator overloading works, guys. Now the reason why I explained this operator overloading concept is iterators and comparators are kind of like iterators use operator loading, and even comparators can use operator overloading. So I'll show you how. Now let me remove everything. Let's go to iterators now. I hope you guys got what operating overloading is. So basically, you can operator overloading allows you to tell C++ what to do when you add two of your own data types, or one. You can define your own operations like that. Okay. So that's what operator overloading is. Now let's go to comparators. I want to show you the presentation once. So sorry, I meant iterators. So iterators. Okay. So containers are basically data structures, right? They have elements in them. They store data, and whenever you have data, you want to be able to look at this data, that is access it. So you want uh, it's not always easy to access data in different I mean, it's not the same way that you access data structures, I mean data in each data structure. For example, you don't access data in a tree the same way as you access data in an array. In arrays you have indexes for each element, but in trees you don't have that indexes, because the structure itself is different, right? It doesn't make sense to have an index for each element. I mean, you can define indices, but um, that's not what trees are meant for. arrays have random access. That is, you can pick any element at random. You can pick fourth element if you want, fifth element if you want. But if you take a set, it's not how it works. Uh, so let's look at a set. If you remember, if you attended the last session, Prashanit was talking about sets and maps. So let's look at sets. So we'll look at the sets iterator. So iterators are basically objects which allow you to access data in these containers. So first of all, what is a set? Can someone tell me what a set is? We've discussed Prashani discussed this in the last session, last Saturday. So do you guys have any idea of what a set is? Okay, I'm covering the definition a little bit, hoping that you guys remember something. Okay, fine. So basically, sets are ordered collections of unique elements. That is, um, so in an array of numbers, you can have how many ever numbers you want. I mean, it has a size. So let's say that it is an array of 100 numbers. The numbers can be in any order, and they can be duplicates, right? There's no restriction in arrays. But in a set, uh, all the numbers are ordered automatically. So when you add a number to a set, it is automatically put in the correct place, and you cannot have duplicates in sets. Like a set can only have unique elements. You cannot have duplicates. For example, look at these examples. This is a set of strings, and each string is different in this set, and this is another set below. So each number is unique, right? And all of them are ordered. So uh, so this is what sets are: ordered collections of unique elements. So what do you think a set looks like? Like, when I say set, what is it? What picture is in your head? Like, do you think a set looks like an array, like a continuous a segment, like a list of numbers? Do you think that is how it looks in memory? Do you think a set's representation is like this? Like, sure, we think of sets like this, but do you think they actually look like this? That Do you think that they are implemented like this? The answer is no, because sets actually look like this. So sets are implemented using another data structure called a binary search tree. So we'll talk about binary search trees some other time, but I'll tell you the gist of what a binary search tree is. So a binary search tree is a special type of binary tree in which, uh, okay, let me explain this picture. So if you notice in this picture, this is a binary search tree, right? So each element has two children, two immediate children, one on its left and one on its right. So that is a binary tree basically. And what is special about binary search trees is every element has this property. All elements to its left side are smaller than that element, and all elements on its right side are greater than this element. For example, let's take 25. 25 is called the root node of this binary tree. Okay, because it is at the top, it is the uh, parent of every other node. So 25 is called the root node. And if you see, all the elements onto the left side of 25 are smaller than 25. 20, 10, 22, 12, 5, all these are less. 36, 30, 40, 38, 48, 28, all these are greater than 25. And this property holds for every node in this tree. For example, take this node 10. 10, 5 is less than 10, so it is on the left side. 12 is greater than 10, so it is on the right side. Similarly, take 40 here, or take 36. So 30 and 28 are less than 36, left side. 40, 38, 48 greater than 36, right side. So this is what a search tree is. And sets are implemented using this data structure because it is easy to search for elements in a in binary search trees. That is, it is the time complexity of searching for elements in a binary search tree is very less. That is log n. So because each time we are halving the number of elements. We'll talk about BSTs later, but the point that I'm trying to make here is sets are not like arrays. You cannot traverse through a set. That is, you cannot access elements of a set like you access elements of an array. You cannot simply use a for loop and say I is equal to 0, I less than n, I plus plus. You cannot do that because set looks like this inside. But this is what iterators are here to help us with. Iterators allow you to think of set just like an array. That is, they allow you to think that okay, a set is this is what it looks like, and iterators help you to access these elements as if they were just an array, like as if they were just a list of elements. So you can forget that a set looks like this, and you can simply use an iterator and access each element one by one. So as I said, set is an ordered collection, right? So by default, everything is in ascending order. So this set that you're seeing in this picture should have elements in this order: 5, 10, 12, 20, 22, 25, 28, 30, 36, 38, 40, 48. So that order should be there. So when you access elements one by one, first you should get 5, and then you should get 10, then you should get 12, 20, 22, 25, and so on. The last element should be 48. So if you observe, the leftmost element will be the smallest element, and the rightmost element will be the largest element. So iterators allow you to forget about all the details of how you traverse a tree, and they simply provide you with the element that you want. So let's look at an example. Let's use a set iterator. So in order to use a set iterator, you obviously need a set. And let's not forget IOStream. Okay, now let's make a set. Let's make a set of strings. So this is my set. I'll call, this will just be a set of names. We'll keep it simple. Okay, let's take n names. First, we'll need to ask the user to enter n. So enter n. And we'll take n names now. How do you take n names? We'll just use a for loop and take in each name. So we'll call this temp, c in temp. So I'm just taking input, guys, nothing else. So, and now we'll insert this temp into this set called names. The way we do that is names dot insert temp. Okay. So, and finally, we need to print all the names which are in the set. Once, okay, let's do one thing. We'll also do one more thing, like we'll ask some queries. That is, after entering a list of names, I'll ask some questions. Does this name exist or not? Does this name exist or not? I'll ask m queries like that. Enter m. And for, let's take m queries. Sorry. And to check if a element exists in a set or not, sets have this function called find. So you can say if names dot find of temp does not equal to names dot end. So what this means is uh, we're trying to find this temp string inside the name set. If it is not able to find it, it will go to the end of that set. Okay, so names dot end is a pointer to the end of the set. So if it is not equal to the end, that means we found the element. So we'll say exists. This name exists, or else say that it does not exist. Name doesn't exist. Okay, so these are our M queries. So let's just run this program. Okay, let me make this terminal a little big. Okay, so it's asking for n. Let's enter 4 names. I'll enter my name. I'll enter some more names. So I entered 4 names: Sai Kiran, Elliot, Darlene, and Mr. Robot. If you get this, this is a reference from the show called Mr. Robot. If you didn't watch it, then you should. It's a great show. Enter M will ask 3 questions. So the first question is, does Sai Kiran exist in the set or not? So it's saying that this name exists. Let's try Aris's name. Aris name doesn't exist. Okay. Um, and let's try one more name. Let's say Tyrell. Name doesn't exist. So Tyrell is a negative character in the Mr. Robot show. So that name doesn't exist. So this is our basic program. So I wanted to show you how iterators work, right? So let's make an iterator now. So I want to, after asking these questions, I just want to print each of the elements that are in the set. So for that, let's make an iterator. Now, if you remember, I said that you cannot simply use a for loop. Like you cannot use I is equal to 0 and access each element from the set, because sets are not arrays. They don't have indices. So make a set iterator. The way you make an iterator is you specify the type of the set. This is a string set, right? And then you say colon colon iterator, and then a variable name. So my iterator has the name IT, and this is the syntax to make an iterator for anything, for any type of container. We'll make iterators for other containers, but for now we'll make a set iterator. And the way you access this is, first we'll print a small message. The names in the list are for, sorry, we cannot use a for loop, my bad. While IT not equal to names dot end. Okay, another thing that we forgot is, so this is an iterator, right? So think of an iterator like a pointer, like an arrow. Okay, so the first element that it should point to is the first name in the set, right? So initial value of IT should be names dot begin. So names dot begin will return an iterator to the first element of the names set. And while this pointer has not reached the end of the set, print each element. So iterators are basically just pointers. Okay, so you know pointers in C, right? uh, if you don't understand what pointers are, we'll have another session maybe uh, about pointers, but for now just think of them as arrows. Okay, arrows that point to data objects. So mm, now we need to access it it. So it is just a pointer now, but how do you access the data? For example, okay, I'll tell you what to do. So it star it. So when you say star it, it means you're dereferencing the pointer. That means you're accessing the data that is pointed to by it. So for example, let's look at this slide. uh, yeah, this slide. So you have this arrow here, right? I'm just giving you an example. So this arrow you can think of as a pointer, and what it is pointing to is the data. So here this string, but isn't this the left shift operator? This string will be the data and this arrow will be the pointer. So it is the pointer, and to get the data that is at it, we use star it will give you the data. And once you print this name, say go to the next element. So the way you do that is you simply increment the iterator it plus plus. So this is where operator overloading comes in. You're using operator overloading with an iterator object. So by default, C++ does not know what I mean, the computer does not know what you mean by incrementing an iterator. But in STL, there are some functions which define what to do when you use plus plus with with an iterator. So it will move that iterator forward. Internally, what is happening is, let me explain. So you see this BST, right? So initially, the iterator will be at 5. Initially, the iterator will be at 5 because this is the first element in the set. And then when you say it plus plus, iterator will go to 10 because this is the next next smallest element. And then when you say it plus plus again, it will go to 12. Next it should go to 20, 22, 25, 28, and so on. So all that logic is handled behind, and we don't have to know how it is implemented. So all that is being done just by this small operator overloading statement, it plus plus. So now let's run this program. This should print all the names in the list. Enter n. Let's enter the same names again. So Darlene is Elliot's sister. Let's ask some questions. I don't know. Okay, so that part is over. We saw this part before, but this is the new part. The names in the list are Darlene, Elliot, Mr. Robot, and Sai Kiran. Now, if you observe, this is alphabetically ordered. Do you see this? Darlene comes before Elliot because D is smaller than E, and these are alphabetically ordered strings, right? But when we entered them, we entered it in this order. I entered Sai Kiran first, Elliot next, Darlene, and then Mr. Robot. But what came out is uh, these strings ordered in ascending order. They come out in alphabetical order, right? So that's what sets do, and this is how iterators work. So those are iterators for you, and just give me a second. Yeah. If you want, we can look at another iterator. Let's, but I think we should go to comparators now. Comparators are interesting. Okay, let me talk about comparators. As you solve problems, you'll be using iterators more and more, and that should be uh, enough practice for you to remember these, the syntaxes and all. Don't worry about the syntax, you just get it through practice. So that was about iterators, guys. And now we come to our third topic, which is comparators. So do you remember the first example that we did today? Like, do you remember the basket example? So we have we created some baskets, Each of these baskets has some items, and so let's write that code once again. It shouldn't be very difficult. It was pretty simple, right? I should have saved it separately, but I didn't. We'll write it again anyway. So let's go to this. Each basket has some items. I'll just say items for now. And initially items will be 0. And when you say add, uh, item should increment. Okay, so this is the basket structure. Very simple. It just has some items and increment and decrement operators. You know what? You can actually use operator overloading here. Let me show you how. Instead of calling add and remove, you can do this. Void operator. Okay, wait. Struct basket operator plus plus and struct basket operator minus minus. Okay, so when you say plus operator, when you use plus plus with struct basket v, let's give it a reference. This will be a reference variable, guys. And one more thing is I should put this outside. Okay, so one second. Yeah, so when you say plus plus b, it should simply increment the number of items inside the basket. B dot items plus plus. Here b dot items minus minus. You can have a condition here. If the number of items is greater than 0, only then decrement. You cannot have negative items inside a basket, right? So that is the reason. So we used a little bit of operator overloading here. Now let's make a basket B, and let's say b plus plus. Let's call it couple of times. So I said b plus plus 3 times. So now how many elements should b have? B dot items. It should have 3 elements now, right? So let's run this and check. Operator declared for postfix. Okay. No operator plus plus declared for postfix plus plus. Okay. Acha, I forgot. So the operator that we declared here is prefix. Plus plus won't work. Plus plus b will work. My bad. No return statement. Okay, we forgot to return here. Return b. Okay, fine. So we added 3 items, right? So that is what the output is, 3. Now let's make some baskets. Let's make 3 baskets now. In fact, let's make an array of baskets. B. Okay, before going to baskets, just remember whatever happened here. I want to show you this cool function called sort. We'll be using sort now. So to use sort, you'll need to include this header called hash include algorithm. Okay, algorithm is a header which contains a lot of functions which are very useful. You don't have to ever write sorting functions again, at least when you do competitive programming. So sort function, let me show you with an example. Let's take an array of some random numbers, 5, 6, 8, 9, 1, 0, -1, 99. Okay, these are my numbers. Now I want to sort them and print them. Okay, so instead of writing bubble sort or something, I'll just call this function called sort. I'll send it array and its size. So basically, uh, the first argument is the pointer to the first element, and the second argument is the pointer to the last element. So if you know C, then you know that arrays are pointers, basically pointers to the first element itself. So when I say ARR, it is basically the pointer to the first element, and you can add numbers to pointers, like ARR plus 1 will become pointer to the second element, ARR plus 2 will become pointer to the third element, and ARR plus the size of the array will become pointer to the last element. So how many elements are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if we add 6 to the first element, you'll get the pointer to the last element, right? So if I simply say sort ARR comma ARR plus 6, it will sort the array for me. Now let's print them. There are 7 elements. So let's print each of them. ARR of I. Okay. Let's just print run this. Yeah. So do you see this? These were randomly arranged. 6, 8, 9. These were random. But after I called sort and printed them, these are ordered. -1, 0, 1, 6, 8, 9, 99. This is an ascending order, right? So this is the sort function. This will by default sort in ascending order. You can make it sort in descending order by including this thing. So greater angle brackets int. This is something, this is a little advanced concept. It's called a functor, but you can think of it as a way to tell sort to sort it in descending order. Even this is actually a comparator. We'll talk about comparators in a while, in just a couple of minutes. So let's run this once. Okay, I forgot parentheses. Yeah. Something is wrong here. Okay, I should have put 7 here. ERR plus 7. Yeah. I'm sorry. So there was a small mistake. I should have put ARR plus 7, which is the pointer to the last. I mean, the last element is ARR plus 6, but the end of the array is at ARR plus 7. So ARR plus 7 here, and greater int of brackets will give you descending order. So this is the output: 99,98610 minus 1. Okay. So the reason we are able to sort numbers like this is because C++ knows how to compare two numbers. Like if I give it 1 and 0, it knows which number is less and which number is larger. But if I give it two baskets, C++ doesn't know how to compare two baskets. Like we know how to compare baskets. We know that you should look at the total number of items and see which basket has more. So the basket which has more items will be larger. The basket which has less items will be smaller. But C++ doesn't know that. So if you want to sort some baskets, then uh, you need to write a special function called a comparator. So let's look at comparators. So first of all, let's make some baskets first. I'm making an array of baskets. I'll call it baskets. Let's have 3 baskets in it. Or okay, let's have 4 baskets. And in the first baskets, in the first basket, uh, we'll put 4 items. And in the second basket, we'll put 2 items. And in the third basket, we'll put 3 items. And in the fourth one, we'll put only 1 item. Okay. So this should be, okay, this is 0. This should be 1. This should be 2 and 3. So basically what I did is in basket number 0, I'm adding 4 items. Second basket has 2. Third basket has 4 again. And last basket has only 1 item. Okay. Now I want to sort these baskets. So what do? First I send the pointer to the first basket. And next I can send the pointer to the end of these baskets array, which will be baskets plus 4. Now let's see what happens. The output should be, what should the output be? The smallest number, smallest basket is 1. Second should be 2, and then 4 and 4. This should be the output. And also let's print out this. We forgot to printing. I less than 4, I plus plus. Cout baskets of I dot items. So it should get 1 2 4 4. But let's see what happens. We obviously got an error. So let's look at what the error was. Okay. This is a spelling mistake. This should be baskets. I don't use Visual Studio Code much. So I don't really know the shortcuts of a lot of common things. I want to replace all these with baskets. I'll just do it slowly. I use this editor called Vim. Okay, I think this should be solved now. Okay, we still have an error. Okay. Oh, we made the same mistake. We used postfix again instead of prefix. So let's convert all of these to prefix. Okay. Okay. All of these are prefix now. Still we have errors. Yeah. So this is the first error. See, error no match for operator less than operand types are basket and baskets and basket and basket. So let's read this statement again. No match for operator less than operand types are basket and basket. What this means is sort function is using comparisons, right? It is comparing two baskets in this array, but it does not know how to compare them. Like it knows what x less than y means if x and y are numbers, but if x and y are baskets, what does x less than y mean? It doesn't know it. So we need to specify what x less than y means when x and y are baskets. So that is what we use comparators for. So let's write a comparator. So comparator is just a function again. Okay, but comparators return Boolean values. So this is a must. This is a rule. If you write a comparator, it must return a Boolean, because the comparison returns a Boolean, right? X less than y returns a Boolean. So similar, that is the reason you should return a Boolean. And you can name the comparator whatever you want. I want to name my comparator as compare baskets. So the first basket B1, and let the second basket be B2. And now you simply return. How do you compare two baskets? We're comparing the number of items inside them. So we'll compare it like this. Basket, oh sorry, B1 dot items less than B2 dot items. So this is the way you compare two baskets. So this will give you ascending order, and I'll make another comparator for descending order. Compare baskets DSE, DSC, DSC. I'll just change the symbol to greater than. So this is my ascending order comparator and this is my descending order comparator. These are just functions. They take in two baskets and compare them and return a Boolean value. Now to sort, I'll send this comparator as the third argument. So compare baskets. Compare baskets in ascending order. Okay. So sort function is mostly the same, but we just added a third argument. We sent it the name of the function. That is compare baskets ascending order. Now let's run it. Okay, delete, run. Okay, where did I make a mistake? Okay, let's try it again. Yeah, now it works. Yeah, see, this is what we get, right? This is the expected output. Okay, wait. I forgot a plus plus here. Okay. It's giving me 1144 while we should be getting 1244 because I forgot a plus plus here. Okay, now we got it. So 1244. So now C++ knows how to compare baskets and how to sort them. To sort any data type, the only important thing that you should know is how to compare two objects of this type. How do you sort cars? If I give you a set of cars, how do you sort them? The first question you should be asking me is, well, what are you comparing? Are you comparing the number of seats in the cars? Are you comparing the ground clearance? Are you comparing the boot capacity? What are you comparing? So that is the question that we are answering with comparators. So when you want to sort baskets, what are you comparing? Well, we are comparing the items in these baskets. So that's what we specify using comparator functions. And similarly, if I want to sort them in descending order, I'll call the descending order comparator, compare basket DSC, this thing. So if I call it here, let's run it. Yep, 4421. This is what we should get, right? So yeah, that's what we get. So that is what comparators are. So let's recap for a second, for a minute. I actually wanted to go with an example of students, but I thought that students are like very standard. Like even in college, they use examples of students. So I went with a different example. But anyway, let's recap once. So operator overloading tells us tells C++ how to compare two objects of user-defined types. Like if you make a struct car, what do you mean by car1 plus car2? So you can tell C++ what to do by using operator overloading. Uh, you can do any operator. You can do plus, you can do minus, multiplication, anything. But one important point that you need to remember is you can only do operator overloading for user defined types. You cannot do operator overloading for primary data types. Like uh, C++ already knows what to do when you say int a plus int b. I mean, when you add two numbers, when you add two integers, you get the sum. But you cannot use operator overloading to make plus do subtraction. Like if you say int a int b and you say a plus b and you want the answer to be the subtraction of a and b, you cannot do that. C++ will not allow you to do it because integer is a primary data type. It's not user defined. So you cannot change the meaning of default operations because you can imagine what sort of hell programmers will face if you do operator overloading on basic things like adding integers or floating points, whatever. Like uh, if I say int a into b, uh, I don't want the subtraction. I only want the product. So yeah. And we saw iterators. So iterators are basically objects which allow you to traverse through a container, like a set or a vector or a map. So you can go through uh, each element of the container by using iterators. You can change them, you can access their values, you can go to their neighbors, and so on. There are types of iterators, but we looked at the basic iterator today. We looked at what a set is and how set iterator works and how operator overloading is related to a set iterator. And finally, we looked at comparators. So yeah, that is basically what today's session was. So I hope that you guys liked whatever we went through today. I hope it was entertaining enough and that you learned something. So one thing I want to mention is whatever we learned today, operator overloading, iterators and comparators, you will not use operator overloading as much in competitive programming, but you'll use iterators and comparators a lot. Like a lot of times, some problems require you to make your own structures and classes, some complex problems. So in those cases, you will need to define what to do for each operation to make the code, like to make things easy for yourself. And iterators you'll use a lot to go through a set, to go through a map. You'll need to use iterators. So today we didn't learn any algorithms, but these are concepts that you'll use a lot in competitive programming. We'll come to algorithms and other things in the coming sessions. So we'll go through sorting techniques, we'll go through searching, we'll go through graphs and dynamic programming. We'll go through everything, but we're going slow, right? So that is it for today, guys.